We are Team Vlc-Pufa, and we are here to tell you about an exciting and lucrative new technology that will allow for the mass production of a very valuable nutrient, which has been shown to be important in ocular health. My name is Drew Cameron, and I'm a biochemistry and zoology senior.
My name is Lindsay Jang, and I am an international business and supply chain senior.
I'm Kale Curtin, an energy management and finance sophomore.
I'm Ramesh Bugis, and I'm an MIS and accounting junior.
I want you to imagine for a moment that you are one of the 2 million people in the United States who is unable to recognize faces of loved ones, read, or drive because you suffer from macular degeneration. If you suffered from macular degeneration, your life in the world could look like this through your eyes. But what is macular degeneration? Macular degeneration is a deterioration in the back of the eye, particularly in the center, called the macula. This region of the eye is responsible for the central and most high-resolution part of a person's vision. Research has shown that this region is one of the handful of regions in the body that has a high concentration of what is called a Vlc-Pufa. Vlc-Pufa is an acronym which stands for Very Long Chain Polyunsaturated Fatty Acid. It has been demonstrated that people who suffer from macular degeneration have a significantly decreased number of these in their macula. There is also another disorder, which is called Stargardt's disease, which has very similar symptoms but shows up in young children. So, our technology is a method to produce these on a large scale. First, we use some sort of host cell, which could either be a microalgae or a yeast cell. We then insert the elobeel-4 gene, which is responsible for the production of Vlc-Pufas in a healthy person's eye. And we insert that into our host cell's DNA. This enables that organism to produce the Vlc-Pufas that we desire. All that needs to be done from that point is to place it in a suitable environment and wait for the Vlc-Pufas to be produced. Vlc-Pufas have been strongly correlated to many ocular disorders, particularly macular degeneration and Stargardt's disease. And our process gives us the ability to produce these on a mass scale. To tell you more about the benefits of our process is Lindsay.
Thanks, Drew. Those are Vlc-Pufas. So we have an unparalleled advantage when it comes to the production of Vlc-Pufas. First, we have our technology. As Drew previously stated, Vlc-Pufas are naturally derived through biological hosts. This is the only economically feasible way to produce Vlc-Pufas. Thus, this process is highly scalable. Once the system is in place, the Vlc-Pufas can be produced through the biological hosts, because the biological hosts can increase in size and continuously produce the Vlc-Pufas. We also have intellectual property protection. We have a patented process on Vlc-Pufa production. This means that anyone who wants to make Vlc-Pufas need to come to us first and obtain a license in order to do so. We also have our remaining 19 years on the patent, which means we have long-term proprietary rights and revenue. So with our innovative production process, there are 2 ways to take an essential health ingredient to market. We can either make a pharmaceutical drug or a nutraceutical dietary supplement. Both require research costs, but a pharmaceutical requires 3 or more clinical trials in addition to an FDA review process, which could take 310 days or 10 months, and this whole time could span up to several years. The R&D cost for this industry averages $55 million, but we can only target 3,100 individuals with the Stargardt's disease. Nutraceuticals, on the other hand, do not require clinical trials or an FDA review process. A manufacturer or distributor only needs to notify the FDA 75 days before going to market with their new dietary ingredient. And the average industry R&D costs for a nutraceutical is $8 million, and we could potentially target 2.4 million individuals. So where do we get this market size? Currently, 70% of the US population, or 211 million individuals in the United States, are taking a nutraceutical or have taken a nutraceutical in the past 30 days. This market is growing at 4.5% each year. So within this market, it includes the eye health supplements and the omega-3 supplements. Since Vlc-Pufas are fatty acid beneficial to ocular health, we decided to benchmark these two segments in order to come up with our market size. First, we took the 610,000 individuals taking eye health supplements, and then we looked at the omega market. This market is divided between additives, such as a omega-3 included in a multivitamin pill, and standalone omega-3 pills. Since Vlc-Pufas are only relevant to the additive segment, we took a conservative assumption and came up with 10% of this market, which is 1.8 million individuals. Together, these two segments total 2.4 million individuals, which is a value almost equal to $2 billion. So, with our innovative production process, we decided to go into the nutraceutical industry because the market is large, growing, and profitable. Next, Cale will discuss how we will reach this market.
Thank you, Lindsay. So now that you've seen how large this potential nutraceutical market is, let's look at what it's going to take for us to enter it. The Vlc-Pufa supply chain will have two main entities: intellectual property and a manufacturer. The first aspect of our intellectual property is our process for the production of Vlc-Pufas. The second is the ELO-VL4 gene. These two aspects will come together to produce our intellectual property. This intellectual property will then be licensed to a manufacturer. Through our team's research, we've determined that a licensing agreement is the most effective way to commercialize this technology. The University of Oklahoma holds the patent for the production process for Vlc-Pufas, while Merck holds the patent for the ELO-VL4 gene. There are many possible manufacturers for the Vlc-Pufas. When we look at possible manufacturing partners, we are looking for a manufacturer who has the capabilities of using a yeast system for the production of the Vlc-Pufas. We are also looking for a manufacturer with scalability. The Vlc-Pufas will need to be produced on a very large scale for them to be both cost-effective and have the ability to penetrate the entire market. And finally, we're looking for a manufacturer with quality control measures in place. We want a manufacturer who's going to produce a Vlc-Pufa as a nutraceutical ingredient and that a distributor would be able to put into their products. Two companies that we've looked at, or two companies who would be examples of a possible manufacturer, would be Garden State Nutritionals or DuPont. Both of these companies have the capabilities or currently have the yeast system. They are very large, scalable companies, and they have quality control measures in place and are recognizable in the marketplace. Now that you've seen who these entities will be, let's look at where their value would come from. For the manufacturer, value comes from the sales of the Vlc-Pufa, either as a nutraceutical ingredient to distributors or as a dietary supplement directly to consumers. A percentage of these sales will then move to the intellectual property holders, either as a royalty fee. This royalty fee will then be split between the University of Oklahoma and Merck. So how large can we expect these sales and royalty fees to be? We'll start with the manufacturer. A manufacturer can expect to have several costs with the production of the Vlc-Pufas. There will be an initial cost of the cloning, sequencing, and genetic modification for the yeast cells, along with the labor cost throughout the process, from the cloning of the cells all the way through the extraction and purification of the Vlc-Pufas. Additionally, the majority of our costs will come from the raw materials for the Vlc-Pufas. These costs consist of the media, which is the liquid in which the yeast cells are grown, as well as the precursors, which will be other fatty acids that our process will elongate into Vlc-Pufas. Finally, there will be a cost for the extraction of the Vlc-Pufas from the yeast cells, as well as the purification process for these Vlc-Pufas. These costs will total to $68 per gram. After an industry average profit margin of 8.5%, we expect a revenue of $74 per gram of the Vlc-Pufa. Considering the Vlc-Pufa's recommended dosage will be much lower than other fatty acids on the market, such as EPA or DHA, we expect a cost per pill of approximately $1.70. This is comparable to the other fatty acids on the market, such as EPA, with a cost of 96 cents per pill. And as we mentioned earlier, EPA is one of our precursors, so it makes sense that we would be slightly higher in cost than they. With these costs and revenue numbers in mind, along with the potential market we discussed earlier, let's look at the profit our manufacturer could receive in the first 3 years of production. Assuming a saturation of 50% of our potential market, along with an initial investment of $39,000 for the labor and the raw materials cost of the cloning and genetic modification of the yeast cells. Once our production has began, we expect operating costs in the first year of $250 million. This will be followed by revenue in the first year of $270 million. In year 2, it will be $500 million in operating costs, with revenue of $540 million. And finally, once we have reached 50% saturation of the market in year 3, we will have operating costs of $750 million, along with revenues of $810 million. So as you can see by these numbers, our manufacturer will be profitable even from the very first year of production. So we expect to have a large number of manufacturers wanting to license our product. But before a manufacturer would want to license our product, there needs to be a demand for our product. So to talk about how we plan on creating this demand is Rinosh.
Thank you, Kevin. So, to create a demand cycle, we have 6 steps that we have outlined, which have been used by omega-3s and luteins and other nutraceuticals in the market in the past. First, the university will have to complete its research showing the health benefits of Vlc-Pufas and the efficacy of the technology that we have created. Second, this research will be tested by third-party independent researchers according to their own will, which provides us credibility. Once these 2 steps are done, we can market our Vlc-Pufas as an essential nutrient for the human body. This will then educate and create demand among consumers. And the businesses would then, to fulfill this customer demand, contract with the manufacturer to acquire Vlc-Pufas. And at this point, as demonstrated through our supply chain, the manufacturer would license with the University of Oklahoma for the production process and produce Vlc-Pufas. But before we could complete the first step in our demand cycle, we need to finish some more research streams. Currently, we're researching on absorption study. This means we're researching that Vlc-Pufas could be absorbed by the bloodstream and delivered to the places in the body that needs Vlc-Pufas. Second, we're also doing a macular study, which would prove the causal relationship between the ocular health and Vlc-Pufas. But before we can go on with this research, we need additional investments. Currently, we would need $100,000 to set up a yeast system to create a blueprint for the manufacturer to put in a larger system and produce Vlc-Pufas on a scale that Kale previously stated. Second, we would need to invest $2 million in Vlc-Pufas to conduct long-term feeding studies. Currently, there has been a $40,000 investment in short-term studies such as the short absorption study and also the macular health study. So after this research is done and a manufacturer licenses with the university for our technology, this would be our return. This would be the value that we would receive. For the first year, according to our metrics of market, if they reach the saturation, we would receive $1.4 million. For the second year, we would receive $2.7 million, and third year, we would receive $4 million. So, as you can see, we would break even in year 2 and create positive value for the university from then on. And this is based on a 1% royalty fee on the sales of the manufacturer. So, we have some next steps that we need to do before we can complete this project. We are currently researching and applying for grants that would provide funding to complete this project, such as the groups such as Macular Society and Research to Prevent Blindness provide this funding. Second, we need to pursue manufacturing partners such as DuPont and Garden State Nutritionals and set up a supply chain to go into market once the research is complete. So, you can see the manufacturer would use a patent-protected scalable technology to produce Vlc-Pufas to reach this growing and large nutraceutical market. Our business plan would include licensing to a manufacturer, and our next steps would include pursuing funding and potential manufacturing partners. Thank you all for being here this evening and listening to the presentation, and at this time I would like to open the floor for questions.
Yeah, I had a question that popped in my head at like almost the very beginning of the presentation, and then it wasn't addressed until almost the very end, which was when you were talking about the Vlc-Pufas and its relation to macular degeneration, I couldn't tell if you had said that it was proven to be the cause of macular degeneration or if it was just assumed to be. And then at the end you said further research is needed into proving this causal relationship. And I felt like that'd be extremely key. So I wonder if you all have been looking into this research to see if there has been more conclusive evidence that this is the cause and not just like a byproduct of the larger root cause of the problem.
So here's what the science shows right now. It shows that people who suffer from macular degeneration or Stargardt's disease have about 1/3 to 1/2 the number of Vlc-Pufas of a normal individual. It's also been shown in animal models that if you knock out the production of Vlc-Pufas, and that's all you do, you induce macular degeneration.
I just wanted a quick clarification. What exactly is like the target market? It's like I saw like 50% for manufacturers, but then there was like that first graph with a smaller number. It seemed like there was two target markets. That may have been me.
The target market for the people or consumers actually taking a potential Vlc-Pufa is the 2.4 million. That was the first pie chart that you saw.
Okay, and so the market penetration would be 50% of that.
50% of that market.
So someone taking your product, what improvements would they see if they had macular degeneration?
So macular degeneration is usually something that sets on late in life. And so you can see, your doctor can see signs of it before you do. And so that's one of the main problems of macular degeneration, is that you can go asymptomatic of it for a very long time. The hope is that through normal doctor visits, that they will catch this early and you'll be able to take something like Vlc-Pufas to stop the progression or slow the progression of it. If you have already started to experience symptoms such as vision loss, that is the result of death of neurons inside the macula, and that is irreversible. But hopefully, for people with macular degeneration in the earlier stages, this progression can be stopped and some of the symptoms can be evaded.
So it sounds like the model that you used is omega-3s, right, for how you reach consumers and what the benefits might be. What should we take away as being as showing that these Vlc-Pufas are superior to what's already on the market with omega-3s?
Well, as was stated about the technology and the science and how it relates to macular degeneration, a lack of Vlc-Pufas in the macula alone can induce macular degeneration. And so you can take all of the lutein or the fish oil that you want. If you have the mutations which give rise to macular degeneration, or you have the genetic mutation which gives rise to Stargardt's disease, we know that you cannot abate those symptoms with other things, and Vlc-Pufas are the only thing that can address that specific cause.
Okay, sorry, just one more question then. But we also know, but we're targeting more than just, you're targeting also people who are looking at eye health specifically, right? We went back to your market demand. It's people with the disease and people who are interested in taking supplements for eye function. Okay, so what makes you, so we know that for macular degeneration, is that the only reason that people take, for that other category of people that are interested in eye health? Is it just macular degeneration, or are there other things they're worried about?
The other aspects of eye health, omega-3s don't really address eye health.
Okay.
They're more for cardiovascular health or other areas of the body, whereas the Vlc-Pufa would be, we know it's an essential fatty acid in your eye. And so omega-3s, I think there are some in your eye, but not like the Vlc-Pufas are. And so it addresses a different issue than the omega-3s do. So they're not really competitors in the way. The competitors with Vlc-Pufa would be something more like lutein or other specifically eye-related nutraceutical ingredients. And even with lutein, it does a different job than lutein.
Okay, so that might be something that we think about telling the story.
could be completely ignorant of this, but $1.70 per pound cost seems really high. Is this comparable to other products that are being sold on the market? Like, are people actually willing to pay that much for this sort of, I mean, I don't know how much fish oil is omega-3, but is this at all in that same range, or is this kind of way higher?
As we talked about in the slide, the cost of EPA per pill is about 96 cents, which again, when I first heard those numbers, I thought that seemed very high also. But it does seem to be comparable to other.
EPA, well, 96 cents and $1.70 is quite a big difference whenever you're talking about a bottle full of pills. It's
Right.
almost twice as much, and it's like 75% more.
Right, that's true.
I might have missed this, but when is the licensing going to happen? Is that after the FDA process?
It'd be after we would do research and third-party researchers, and if there's a demand among businesses to provide Vlc-Pufas to the consumers, manufacturers will be contacted, and then, or we will be contacted to license and supply. So it would be after the research, after the demand's created, and then we'd be interested in picking up to create them.
And you couldn't see any exit strategy here in the research go ahead about licensing. My question being, how would you like to convince the university that you want to go through all of the research and then license it as opposed to just getting at a company after they've already supported all that?
Spinning out a company to produce the Vlc-Pufas.
Correct. And that's it.
Just the barriers to entry into the manufacturing sector are just huge. It would take hundreds of millions of dollars to create a manufacturing plant capable of producing the Vlc-Pufas, whereas the licensing agreement can begin bringing value to the university in a much shorter time and for a long period of time.
Exactly. So make sure that's explained.
Okay.
I'm still a little confused. What was the size of the pharmaceutical market?
3,100 individuals. Those are the individuals with Stargardt's disease. And the reason why that is the size of our market is because the Vlc-Pufas, they would only be able to be therapeutic towards those amount of individuals with a pharmaceutical grade drug.
Okay, how large is the market in terms of dollars?
We can look into that.
What's the plan B if the absorption study goes bad for delivery options for? You mentioned that you've got a study to see whether the absorption through the stomach can actually deliver the Vlc-Pufas to the eyes. What if that doesn't happen? Are there backup strategies for delivery that don't involve taking the pill?
There are backup strategies, but there's also several options that we can take for just absorption through the digestive system. So if this method, or if the initial absorptive studies don't show what we want them to, there are other options that we can use to like pair Vlc-Pufas with something else that would increase absorption. So we are confident that we could show that that Vlc-Pufas could be absorbed through one of these methods, but there's also research being done on ocular injections and other options as well.
So you guys are asking for funding, or you say you're going to pursue funding. It was $100,000, I think. Would you put $100,000 behind this idea, this business strategy that you've developed so far? It's a lot of money.
Yes.
You would?
Yes. Because when we research, we see a high return. So if we can convince an investor that these high returns, such as OU's licensing revenue itself, would be $1.4 million for the first year, and that's based on 50% saturation and 1/3, or capturing 1/3 of it in the first year. So it's actually 1/3 of the 50% would give us $1.4 million. And let's say OU gives away 10% to the person who invests $1 million or $100,000. They'll still break even in year 2. So it's a lucrative. I mean, investment's always also about risk. So I feel like if a person is willing to take the risk, and they'll have high return.
So I realized that you focused mostly on the ocular health and didn't talk very much about other possible areas that Vlc-Pufa can go into, which potentially can also increase the market because the Vlc-Pufa are not found only in the ocular tissue, they are also found in sperm. And when you knock out the Vlc-Pufa, the animals do not breed very well. 2 humans have been found which lack the gene yellow VL4 that produce the Vlc-Pufa, and these people have intellectual problems. They are not intellectually well developed, and they have seizures. When we knock out the yellow VL4, the animals die. We just did some experiment where we rescued the animals through genetic approach, but the animals that are rescued, they develop the same symptoms like the humans. They don't walk properly. You see them jumping around, which means they have something neurologically going on. So this is the potential market that could be eventually targeted once we are able to show that we can get this into the gut and it will get to the target tissues. So that's one thing you may want to explore further down the line and make the market bigger than just focus it on ocular health.
And we have, by the way, already shown absorption. We fed it to mice, and it was absorbed in the gut. It was found in the blood and in the liver. So it is absorbed. What we haven't done yet is we haven't had enough material to deliver it to the retina. That would require feeding it multiple doses for several days at the very least. And we don't have enough material to do that feeding study. So when we say absorption study, we really are talking about, how much do we have to give it to see it in the retina. But we do know that it is absorbed in the gut.
Transition.
Yeah. All right, let's go into feedback. I think in general, you guys, this is great. I think that one thing that's different about this project compared to the other ones is that